Everything in moderation is a philosophy that encourages balance and self-control in all aspects of life. It suggests that while it's okay to indulge in pleasures like food, entertainment, even work, excess in any direction can lead to negative consequences. And it's pretty easy to apply this to professional wrestling. Extreme violence can make for amazing storytelling, like it did with the CM Punk Drew McIntyre Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, but if there had been a series of bloody bouts leading up to it, it wouldn't have had the same impact. Moxley. There's nothing wrong with a little sexy sex in your pro wrestling. Gen X folks and older, remember when there was like one woman in the WWE? It was Sunny. Prime Sunny, not inmate 334526 Sunny. And she was sexy. Fast forward a couple years, and you got the Divas Search and a roster full of women whose only purpose was to appear in bikini contests, pudding matches, and pillow fights. Again, I have no problem with these segments, but without moderation, it got hard to care about them. Got hard. Sorry. I'm Singer Siete for 7 Wrestling. Let's take a look at 7 risque moments you probably forgot about. And yes, I'm sure that many of you remember every moment on this list, and if you do, kudos to you. I have trouble remembering my own social security number. Now, before we get into this, we appreciate your support, so if you enjoy this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and scissor kick that notification bell. Also, we have got merch. Show the world that you're a part of the brotherhood, even if you're a sister, with some of our snazzy apparel, stickers, and other business. Number 1, flash in the pan. I'm usually pretty decent at knowing when a wrestler is going to be a big deal. I knew the first time that I saw CM Punk that he was going to be a big star. I thought Scott Steiner was going to be a main eventer once he was done with tag team wrestling. But I get it wrong sometimes. When everybody was calling Stunning Steve Austin the next big thing when he arrived in WCW, I just didn't see it. And when I first saw Sean O'Haire in WCW, I thought he was gonna be the guy. He had it all. The looks, the size, the charisma, the in-ring skills, all the things that make Vince McMahon giddy. O'Haire was one of the younger talents WWE saw potential in after acquiring WCW in 2001. He initially teamed with Chuck Palumbo, but was soon sent to developmental. When he resurfaced in 2003, WWE gave him one of the most unique gimmicks of the era, a mysterious devil's advocate character where he would tempt people into embracing their darker instincts. His cryptic vignettes were well received and fans were very intrigued by his potential. Sure, sometimes they'd make some questionable choices like having him dress like Santa and tell kids that Santa isn't real and then stripping down in front of those same children. I can think of at least 2 things wrong here. But for the most part, it was a really interesting concept. He'd encourage other WWE superstars to do risque things in order to get the attention they felt they deserve. In one instance, Brian Kendrick was frustrated with his ability to become a WWE superstar, so O'Haire encouraged him to take a cue from a popular Nike commercial. In the ad, a streaker ran onto a soccer pitch, and was able to evade security because he was wearing Nike shoes. Sure enough, on the February 6, 2003 episode of SmackDown, Kendrick would give in to O'Haire's persuasion and recreate the moment. It would not be the dumbest thing Brian Kendrick would ever do. Oh, and fun fact, that security guard is none other than Kendrick's fellow Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy graduate, Daniel Bryan Danielson. But O'Haire wasn't done there. A few weeks later, he'd run into Dawn Marie, who was bummed out that Torrie Wilson had been chosen for Playboy, and that Torrie and Nydia would get to participate in the Girls Gone Wild event. Oh, sorry, that's the Girls Gone Wild event that the WWE has desperately tried to have erased from history. O'Haire would convince her to go out, give the audience a show, which she did, and maybe not surprisingly, the reaction she got was a lot more positive than the one Kendrick got. Unfortunately for O'Haire, he ended up getting paired with Roddy Piper, which never really let Shawn shine. Injuries and reported backstage issues further hindered his momentum, ultimately leading to his release in 2004. Number 2, a bikini's bikini. I'm good for at least one reference that totally dates me per episode, and this time I'm going with the 1980 comedy Airplane. Now, if you have not seen Airplane, it is a masterclass in comedic filmmaking, blending rapid-fire gags, slapstick, and deadpan delivery into just a relentless parody of disaster films. The film brilliantly spoofs overly dramatic tropes of 1970s aviation thrillers, particularly the 1957 film 0 Hour. And one of my favorite bits, and it's so dumb, is when Robert Stack's Captain Rex Kramer takes off his sunglasses just for there to be another smaller pair of sunglasses underneath. Now, here I am comparing that epic moment to a WWE bikini contest. Surely, I can't be serious. Oh, I am serious. Don't call me Shirley. It was the Judgment Day 2003 pay-per-view where it would be recent Playboy cover girl Torrie Wilson squaring off against the, at the time, two-time Playboy cover girl Sable. And it was all sponsored by Clearasil. Do you need a joke there, or can we just move on? Part of the build to this was that Sable was saying that she had never lost a bikini contest before. So like, the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak, but hot and oily. Oh wow. And this was the WrestleMania bikini contest with Lillian Garcia singing Torrie's theme music live. Sable would go first, and true to her past performance, would wear a barely there bikini, the type that Cisco would totally approve of. Then Torrie would remove her robe and show off this little number, still super hot, but maybe not as revealing as one would expect on a Ruthless Aggression era pay-per-view from someone promoting her appearance in a men's magazine. Seemed like Sable's winning streak was going to be safe until Torrie pulled the old airplane maneuver and had a tinier bikini on underneath, and Jerry Lawler would burst into flames. Fun fact about this segment is that the original pitch for the end of the segment was for Torrie to have body paint underneath the bikini, similar to what Sable had done at Fully Loaded 5 years earlier, but Torrie rejected it. Probably because Torrie was worried that they would make a creepy bear in her likeness. Number 3. $1 Billion Bottom. The era where Stephanie McMahon was the general manager of SmackDown was kind of a weird one. She'd wrestle her own father on pay-per-view a few days before her real-life wedding. She'd kiss Eric Bischoff at a Halloween party shortly after Eric was wearing a Vince McMahon mask. And in one segment, Stephanie bashed Vince for encouraging her to sleep with his business associates when she was underage. Yeah, weird. And her attire seemed to get a lot more revealing. You've got the Halloween costume she wore the night that John Cena debuted his rap act. She wore this when she squared off against Sable. There's this outfit. It was a whole mood. And then the moment that probably is best remembered was when she met up with the Doctor of Thugonomics in the ring. Cena would make some lewd raps, even offering Stephanie $20 to rip off Sable's top. He'd finish off the bit by saying, "Sable's a hoe. You're a diva with class. Nobody's watching us, Steph. Why don't you let me smack that?" And of course, the audience was kind enough to fill in the last part. She'd dare him to put his money where his mouth was, and he proved to be a man of his word. It was weird, but the moment that made this list is even odder than that. On the April 24th, 2003 episode of SmackDown, Stephanie announced the signing of a new talent named Mr. America, and don't worry, we're going to hear more about him later, but before we move on, in hindsight, it is odd that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is prominently featured in this guy's introduction video, but what we're talking about right now is the intro shot that was used for Stephanie, which was a camera angle that rose from her ankles all the way up to her rear end. Yikes! Who's producing this show? Oh, wow. Never mind. Number 4, Ranch Devereaux. Let's start this one off like every paper I had to write in high school. Webster's Dictionary defines the word subtle as meaning difficult to understand or perceive. Subtlety in writing is a powerful tool that allows authors to engage readers on a deeper level, encouraging them to think critically and make their own connections. Instead of spelling everything out, subtle writing invites the audience to read between the lines, creating a more immersive and intellectually satisfying experience. This approach fosters a sense of discovery, making the reader an active participant in uncovering themes, emotions, and underlying messages rather than being a passive consumer of information. Or, you could just huck a container of white creamy stuff onto Trish Stratus's boobs. It was on the January 18th, 2001 episode of SmackDown where Stephanie McMahon had finally had enough of the way Vince McMahon was spoiling his mistress Trish Stratus. Stratus arrived at the venue in a limousine. She had her own dressing room with a big gold star. Poor Stephanie, as she ran into her husband Triple H, all she had was a vegetable tray that featured Chekhov's ranch dressing. Later in the show, a furious Stratus would barge into the room to call out Stephanie for booking her in a spanking match on the previous Raw. What? Research. Oh! On that week's Raw, Trish was in a spanking match with Jacqueline that almost gave Jerry Lawler an on-air heart attack about a decade early. Back to SmackDown, Trish and Stephanie would get into it for a bit before the billion-dollar princess would splash the heavily alluded to condiment directly into Miss Stratus's décolletage. Haha, we're fancy. We use words like décolletage. Number 5, get that bag. Ooh, from one cream to another. The November 25th, 2002 episode of Monday Night Raw kicked off with the World Tag Team Champions Chris Jericho and Christian stealing a win over the Dudley Boys. When it was all said and done, the champs hit the showers, but when they came out, they were shocked to learn that their bags were missing. They'd quickly learned that the Dudley Boys were the culprits and marched out to the ring to confront them. In towels. As Bubba Ray and Devon were tossing the Canadians' clothing out to the fans, Bubba would uncover a jar of something called ass cream. We'd never learn what it was or what purpose it served, but Jericho was incensed that they had stolen Christian's supply of this mysterious substance. Punchline to this bit was when Spike Dudley snuck up behind the towel twosome and relieved them of their limited attire. See, all these entries aren't girls. And this one has a bit of a weird aside to it. Apparently, Vince wanted Christian and Jericho to literally be nude underneath those towels. On an episode of Inside the Ropes, Jericho would say, I go in the office, he's like, hey, heard you have a question about today. I said, I don't have a question, I have a statement. I'm not doing it. I am not standing in front of a crowd on Monday Night Raw. He's like, damn it, what are we supposed to do then? Fortunately, Jericho was able to appeal to the limited portion of McMahon's brain that listens to rational thought and told him they'd get kicked off the air if they showed two nude men on live TV, especially on a program that has kids in the audience. The compromise was that they'd cut to a wide angle and the tag champs would be wearing flesh-colored thongs. And ass cream? Still a mystery to this day, but at least Goldust got to do a callback a little bit later on. Number 6. Attraction Distraction. After skyrocketing to fame during the height of the Attitude Era, Sable left the WWE in June of 1999 and filed a $110 million lawsuit against the company, alleging sexual harassment, unsafe working conditions. She claimed that WWE executives and male colleagues had created a hostile work environment, forcing her into uncomfortable situations, including pressure to participate in lewd storylines. This lawsuit sent shockwaves through the wrestling industry, as few had publicly challenged Vince McMahon's company in such a high-profile manner at the time. Despite the heated legal battle and her harsh words about the WWE, the lawsuit was eventually settled out of court later that year. Many assumed the bridge between Sable and the WWE had been burned permanently, but in a shocking turn of events, she returned to the WWE in 2003, 4 years after her dramatic exit. Her comeback stunned fans and insiders alike, as it was widely believed she would never work for the WWE again. And even more surprising than that, when she returned, she immediately entered into a storyline where she was the mistress of the man she sued, Vince McMahon. Actually, that isn't surprising at all. Sable would find herself in the middle of one of the Ruthless Aggression era's weirdest feuds, where after Vince McMahon would lose to Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 19, in storylines, Vince would send Hulk Hogan home to wait out the rest of his contract. Well, around this time, as we mentioned earlier, a masked wrestler with similar mannerisms to the Hulkster made his debut. This was Mr. America. Now, this is a pretty common wrestling trope where a banished good guy wrestler will return barely disguised under a mask to drive the bad guy authority figure nuts. McMahon would enlist Sable, Roddy Piper, and the aforementioned Sean O'Haire to his side, while Mr. America would have Stephanie McMahon and a one-legged fan who just happened to be a wrestler named Zach Gowen. See, I told you it was weird. But what made this list is what happened on the June 12, 2003 episode of SmackDown, where Vince was set to arm wrestle Zach Gowen, and if Gowen won, he'd get a WWE contract. This guy. Arm wrestling this guy. Well, Mr. America thought that was unfair, and since he fights for the rights of every man, he stepped up to arm wrestle Vince himself. After consulting with noted arm wrestling expert Sable, McMahon agreed, but it wouldn't be for Gowen's contract, and if he won, Mr. America would have to leave the arena. For some reason, Mr. America would agree to this terrible deal, even though he had nothing to gain, which is maybe the first hint that Mr. America wasn't Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan was much better at politics. As Mr. McMahon was nearing defeat, Sable would lower the top of her dress to distract Mr. America, thus allowing Mr. McMahon to pick up the victory. Okay, so he wouldn't do a clean job in an arm wrestling match? Yeah, that's definitely Hogan. Number 7. Cartoon Tush. While WWE is best known for its live-action wrestling entertainment, animation has proved an opportunity to explore creative storytelling beyond the ring. One of the earliest ventures into animation was Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, which aired from 1985 to 1986. Show featured animated versions of popular WWE wrestlers like Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Junkyard Dog, though the real-life wrestlers did not provide the voices. And instead of focusing on wrestling matches, the series took a more comedic, action-adventure approach, portraying the superstars in exaggerated, often absurd storylines. While short-lived, the show remains a nostalgic favorite for fans of the era. In more recent years, WWE has embraced animation through partnerships with major studios. Camp WWE, 2016 adult-oriented animated series produced by Seth Green's Stupid Buddy Studios, presented a comedic take on WWE stars as they were kids at a summer camp run by a cartoonish version of Vince McMahon. WWE has also collaborated with Warner Brothers for several animated crossover films featuring its superstars interacting with beloved characters. You've got films like Scooby-Doo, WrestleMania Mystery, The Flintstones in WWE, Stone Age SmackDown, and The Jetsons in WWE, Robo WrestleMania. That combines the world of wrestling with classic animated franchises, introducing the WWE characters to a broader, more family-friendly audience. And then you've got the animated project that starred Vince McMahon teaming up with his own rear end. That's right, in 2006, the WWE produced Mr. McMahon and His Ass, a bizarre, satirical animated series centered around Vince McMahon's posterior as a sentient character. Just check out this intro. Look, his rear end can drive a motorcycle, it can lift weights, it can play drums, and in the debut episode, titled Thanksgiving Asserole, Mr. McMahon's rear end punishes a caterer for trying to serve Vince and his wrestlers a tofu turkey by forcing him to join the Kiss My Ass Club. The ass then retrieves a real turkey from within itself and offers it to his guests. Now here's the thing, I'm not the pickiest eater, but I would take the tofu turkey all day over the one that was birthed from Vince McMahon's rear end. At least one other episode of this series exists called The Passion of the Ass, which sees Vince stick it to Mel Gibson, even going so far to fart out a few lines from Hamlet. Poor Yorick indeed. Well, there's our list. Did we forget any other risque WWE moments that you've probably forgotten about? If so, please leave them in the comments section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please do me a solid, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and give a loving hug to that notification bell. It was pointed out that the notification bell's been through a lot. Until next time, I'm Singer Siete for 7 Wrestling saying bye-bye.